I truly do feel this way sometimes. That I feel like I am lost in this weird sea of problems that just cannot be solved. That just can't be solved. They're too different from each other. This guy got it from SSRIs. This guy got it from concussions. This guy got it from jaw issues. This guy got it from a different medicine. How could they possibly all be related? I'm not saying that I have the answer, but I am saying that I have an idea. I have a thought. I'm going to back some of it up with some scientific information, some studies and things. But some of it's going to be a little bit more free flow, free ideas, free thoughts. And there is just no research to officially back me up on it yet. And maybe this will open up ideas for people to do more research on different things. So if you guys want to press the like button for me, because this is my most hard worked on video that I've made so far, I'd really appreciate that. Feel free to share it with other people if you want to. And we're to deep dive this thing. So first of all, this is going to be a complicated image. All right, it's going to look weird. It's going to look crazy, but I'm going to break it down for you real easy. So on the yellow stuff is just all the symptoms of visual snow. So after images, phosphenes, floaters, BFAP, focal issues, and photophobia, those are all the visual issues. You've got the non-visual issues like DPTR, tinnitus, anxiety, depression, brain fog, vertigo, and twitching. And then you have the issues that there could be an error both ways, right? Is it really the migraine, the sound sensitivity, or the TMJD that causes visual snow, or is it the visual snow that causes the TMJ, sound sensitivity, and migraines? I would say most of the time it's probably the arrow going the other way. TMJ, sound, and migraines point to visual snow syndrome. It causes it. All right. And then I randomly in the purple over here, I have tinnitus, vertigo, TMJD, and sound sensitivity that are kind of separate because they're also weird ear issues. So they could also be pointing to visual snow syndrome, but not 100% certain on that. So I just kind of left it blank. So those are all the symptoms. If you just have static, that's fine, but you don't have visual snow syndrome. You don't have all the other problems. And people with severe visual snow syndrome will know that all of these issues can happen all at once, all at the same time, and it can be freaking ridiculous and can suck. Okay. Next up, let's talk about the red. So what causes visual snow syndrome? Well, realistically, we're looking at all of the possible causes of visual snow syndrome. People have claimed that a concussion has caused it, panic attacks have caused it, a chiropractor has caused it, having Eagle syndrome, which is an issue with the stylohyoid process near the back of your skull, which causes blood flow issues, basically, and neck problems in general. All right. Also illnesses, so stomach flu, COVID, vaccines, antibiotics. I hesitate to say vaccines because some people might think automatically an anti-vaxxer or something like that, but it is a solid claim that a lot of people have stated vaccines have maybe caused their visual snow syndrome. And why would that happen? I'm not saying it's the vaccine, I'm saying maybe it's the act of our body doing something against the vaccine, the inflammation process, which we'll get to later. Okay, and then lastly, prescription drugs. So SSRIs, and more. Obviously, SSRIs are the main one, but there are a lot of other drugs that people have claimed have caused visual snow syndrome, including antibiotics, which we talked about earlier, and propranolol, a lot of things that affect blood and stuff like that. So the real question here is the question mark. What is that question mark? By the end of this video, I'm going to try to answer it. Try. No guarantees, but I'm going to try to answer for you what I think is the question mark, and at the very least, open up a conversation about it. So now that we know that visual snow syndrome is going to cause all those things, is likely caused by those issues, why does it point down to serotonin disorder? Because this is a pretty much proven aspect of visual snow syndrome. VSS is caused by a serotonin issue. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to first talk about hopefully I got it here nice and easy, the study here called Abnormal Glutamatergic and Serotonergic Connectivity in Visual Snow Syndrome and Migraine with Aura. This is a very popular study, one of the most popular visual snow studies that has been done, and all it does is it connects the fact that there are. So before we get too deep into a study, I just want you guys to know that a study on its own doesn't necessarily 100% prove that is correct. But generally, if it makes sense and they did a pretty good job with the testing, it's likely to be thought of as that's probably true. Okay, so we're going to go with that's almost probably 100% true, but maybe it's 99.99% true, or it could be just completely wrong, okay? But I'm going to go with it's most likely true, especially if it makes sense. And a lot of this stuff is going to make sense for us. So anyways, even when we've got these smaller studies here, the main point of that entire study was that there were no issues with any other brain chemicals. Adrenaline, dopamine, blah, 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 blah. No problems at all with them. But there was a problem with two of them. Serotonin and glutamate. Okay? There's two of those. Now, in this instance, I want to say that I'm making the statement that I believe that it is a serotonin dysfunction that is causing the glutamate dysfunction. Now, if you guys don't know anything about those two neurochemicals, it's okay. Serotonin is a very, very obviously they're all very common, but serotonin is a big one for anxiety, depression, and for your visual processes. Okay, and glutamate is known as an excitatory neurotransmitter, so it turns on your brain basically. All right, so I am claiming that serotonin is causing the glutamate to be out of sync or to be too high. And I guess the question you should ask is, do we really know that it's too high, or is it just dysfunctional? Well, in the next research article here, we've got something called cortical oscillatory dysrhythmias and visual snow syndrome, a magnetoencephalography study. That's a big chunk of words to say. That's very, very difficult. And in that study, the only thing that they claim, basically, is that visual snow is an excitatory problem. That's their main point. It is not an inhibitory problem. It's an excitatory problem. And that's weird. Well, I shouldn't say it isn't inhibitory. They just know that the areas of the brain are hyper-excited. Okay? What's causing that hyper-excitedness? Probably serotonin problems causing excess glutamate. So now that we got that down, we're actually going to swap to a second image here. We know it's a serotonin disorder. We know it's an excitatory problem. Now we can go on to our third set of research here, which is the most complicated set of research by a long shot. This is very difficult to read, and they're making their own assumptions about things in their conclusion that they say are like, well, it's weird that this is happening, and we're just saying that it probably happens because of this. Now, in addition to that, this is not a study done on visual snow. This is a study done on serotonin in a mouse brain. So can we say that a mouse brain works exactly the same as a human brain? No. But the reason why they do studies on mouse brains is because mouse brains are actually pretty similar to human brains in a lot of ways, believe it or not. So, and you can, raise and kill a mouse and not feel too bad about it. Some people at least. So, this study is all about serotonin and serotonin regulation, okay? And I guess the first thing we need to understand here, before we even get into too much of this overactivity nonsense, which obviously everything leads to overactivity, as you can plainly see, is that serotonin is obviously a neurotransmitter, and it works by the lock and key method, basically. You've probably heard this before, but there's a serotonin molecule, and then there's going to be a receptor. The molecule will go into the receptor, and it will turn on that thing, okay? Which in this case is that neuron. There's like 14 different serotonin receptors, but there's only a few common ones in humans. But the main one is going to be 5-HT2A, which is just 2A is a type of serotonin receptor. All right. The 5-HT, I think, is the serotonin, and I think the 2A is the receptor. So realistically, all of the serotonin is going to be the exact same, but the receptors are going to be different. They just work in a different way. Okay, that's all you really need to know about that. Interestingly enough, I thought this was kind of fun just to know about this, is that a neuron might have like 10 to 50,000 receptors, but each synapse will have like 10 to 100 to maybe like 200 or so actual receptors. So when we're talking about like a synapse between two neurons talking to each other, that serotonin is going to be in that synaptic cleft, basically, in that area between two neurons, and they're going to talk to each other by using that serotonin to activate the other receptors, basically. So this relates obviously to SSRIs, which are going to keep that serotonin inside of that cleft for longer. So having too much serotonin, which is a thing because it makes usually people have worse visual snow. So it means that we already either have too much serotonin or the receptors are likely too active. Okay, kind of. It gets more complicated than that, but kind of that's the way. That's kind of what's going on here. So what they did was they studied the response gain, and this refers to the ability of the brain to basically modulate the strength or the sensory input on neural activity. And it was weird because they were saying that you can actually, without changing how active a neuron actually is, you can adjust the gain. And that was really interesting to me because even though they're saying that the brain is overactive, they're saying the individual neurons, as far as I understand it, are not ridiculously overactive. Isn't that kind of fun? Like, technically, there's too much glutamate going on, maybe downstream or whatnot, but in the general 5-HT2A area, it's not ridiculously overactive or underactive. Too much. But there's basically 4 different ways, as far as I understand it, that this could go down. This was not in the study, by the way, but there are 2 different types of neurons. There's a pyramidal, it's like a pyramidal neuron, and an interneuron. Okay, a PV interneuron. And these 2 different neurons, kind of, and again, it's more complicated than that, even though it sounds stupid to say every time, but it's kind of like this. A pyramidal neuron is going to be an activator, and an interneuron is going to be a deactivator. Pyramidal turns it on, interneuron turns it off. Okay, so if we have an excitatory problem, that we have too much activity going on, well, it could be an overactive pyramidal neuron. Okay, if they're just overactive, we get overactivity in the brain. If we have underactive interneurons, some people say that they could be dead, right? I would argue that that's silly or wrong. I guess a possibility. But based on the study that I'm reading, when they said that it doesn't really matter how ridiculously active or underactive the neurons are, it's more likely that it's some sort of receptor dysfunction or receptor issue than it is actually the neurons themselves being dead. Okay, which is good. It's good. It means it might be reversible, maybe. But in this scenario, what you're going to get is, because they don't turn off the pyramidal neurons, you get overactivity. You can also have something, just general dysfunction. So you could have the pyramidal neurons being overactive and the interneurons being underactive, give you overactivity. Or randomly, you could have kind of a little bit of both in weird ways, because let's talk about the 4th one first. The underactive pyramidal neurons, if you just have underactive pyramidal neurons, it should be the opposite of overactive pyramidal neurons. But you could have underactive pyramidal neurons and underactive interneurons, which would also lead to overactivity. In addition, they work in a really freaking weird way that I don't understand, okay? But I tried to read it like 5 times over and over and over again until I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me, but this is the way it is. And they were saying that having the pyramidal neurons be underactive can somehow still lead to overactivity, because it kind of like shoots it both ways and turns off, doesn't turn on the underactive interneurons in some way. I don't get it. But that's what I've got out of it. So if you wanted to not believe me on that 4th one, like, okay, that's fine. I'm not even sure about it, but I believe it, okay? But there's a lot of different ways that this overactivity could be happening, but it's all going to be relating to that serotonin, okay? The serotonin problem in the visual cortex. Now, this study is all about the visual cortex. It has nothing to do with the thalamus. A lot of people know that I strongly believed in the thalamocortical dysrhythmia theory, which was basically just saying that the thalamus is not filtering out visual input properly, sending too much stuff to the visual cortex, and the visual cortex is overactive. But according to the study, I don't know. I might be changing my mind a little bit. Maybe the thalamus has something to do with it, because when these interneurons or pyramidal neurons are active, they don't just send information one way, they can send information both ways. So they can send it back to the thalamus or forward into more visual processing areas. So this is a weird slide, okay? That's basically all we're saying is something is going on with the serotonin in these two cells, which is causing overactivity. We don't know what exactly. I don't want to say it doesn't matter. It would be nice if we understood it, but just knowing that there's overactivity in something going on here, that there is multiple different ways that it could happen, is kind of intriguing, because people always assume it must be this underactive interneuron action. But there are other ways that it could happen. It could just be an overactive pyramidal. It could be both of them being dysfunctional, and all that could lead to overactivity. So, yeah. Now it gets interesting. This was all stuff that was, I don't want to say proven, but this is pretty fair to say that this is fairly accurate. Okay, we're not doing anything too crazy at this point. So, we can move on now to a somewhat more not factual section. Okay, I don't want to say wrong, but it gets a little more maybe. Does it make sense to you? Okay. This is the part that I would really like to show people. If you're going to watch anything in this video, this would be the part that I would actually really like people to rip me up on if you want to. Tell me, no, that doesn't make any sense. Or tell me, holy crap. Not only does that make sense, it makes perfect sense for me, but it makes sense for anybody else that I talk to about visual snow. Ooh, that would be beautiful if I heard that. So I broke this down into 3 different sections again. I broke it down to, let's look at the yellow here. The concussion, the chiropractor, the eagle syndrome, the neck problem. This is all stuff related to the head and neck. What does this cause? Well, it causes blood flow issues, maybe CSF issues, maybe lymph issues, maybe nerve issues. Okay. The illnesses section. Stomach flu, COVID, vaccine, antibiotics. What's it going to cause? Well, inflammation, lymph, or blood flow issues. Okay, fair enough. Really, the inflammation is the blood flow, but, all these other things can affect this as well. Prescription drugs, SSRIs, and more, and maybe even a panic attack. It can affect your neurotransmitters, believe it or not. It can affect serotonin, it can affect noradrenaline, and it can also affect blood flow in a lot of ways. There's a lot of weird drugs that will affect your blood flow. Believe it or not, even SSRIs, and which I have not put on here, migraines can also affect blood flow as well. They specifically vasoconstrict and make your arteries smaller, which makes the blood flow technically higher, or more easily for your heart to pump that blood really hard, exactly where it needs to get to. So we've got a weird thing on the right here, the Better Business Bureau. Obviously, the entire problem here has been the Better Business Bureau. No. It's not the Better. It's the blood-brain barrier. Now, if you guys have never heard this term before, I would be surprised. You've probably heard of the blood-brain barrier at some point. You probably don't even know what it is, though. You're just like, oh yeah, the blood-brain barrier. It just is a thing. But what does it do? Well, again, I'm not an expert. I haven't done thousands of hours of research. I'm not a neuroscientist or anything like that. But the blood-brain barrier is and when I thought of it, back before I did any of this research, I thought of the blood-brain barrier as sort of there's only really 1 or 2 ways that blood gets into the brain. And there's just a giant filter on my artery that just stops the wrong things from getting in. Right? That's what I thought of it. A weird oil filter or something like that. Just I don't want to call it a sieve, but a coffee filter that goes over my blood that just doesn't let the wrong things in. If it's too big, it doesn't fit, it doesn't go through. That's not how it works. Pretty much at all. When you get down to the smallest of small blood vessels trying to get into the brain or out of the brain, you have to go through a thin lining of cells, basically. These cells are called endothelial cells, and they will either let things in or not let things in. Okay? But believe it or not, there's a lot of things that can affect your blood-brain barrier. That can cause dysfunction in your blood-brain barrier. And I want to go over those few things really, really quickly because I think that a lot of them relate to visual snow. So do I have the right one here? No, I don't. Oh, you're not supposed to see that yet. Okay, there we go. We're good. We're good. So what causes issues or a leaky blood-brain barrier? Well, neuroinflammation, which a lot of people have stated is probably the cause of visual snow. Hypertension, which is not an automatic thing, by the way. A lot of people have hypertension. Doesn't mean you have a leaky blood-brain barrier, but it's like a thing. Alcohol can cause blood-brain barrier, especially if you're like long-term doing that. Inflammation. Oddly enough, bacteria and viruses, which relate to inflammation. I think it's called cytokines. Are oddly enough, and this is weird because it doesn't make sense. You would think that if you were sick or had an infection, that your blood-brain barrier would just be like, I'm going to close off. Okay, I'm not going to let things through. But that's actually wrong. It's incorrect. Your blood-brain barrier is going to become more leaky if you are sick. Whether that's designed or not designed, I don't know. But it's a thing. Also, low oxygen, which I'm going to bring back in just a second here. Also, stress. Sound like some of you guys? Bad sleep. Okay. This one's a mixed bag. You know, some people say they sleep great. Some people are like, oh crap, I just remembered I have TMJ and sleep apnea and I don't sleep very well. Nutrient deficiencies, which seems to be a very common thing amongst a lot of people. They think that they're deficient in weird B vitamins and things like that. And like this maybe could be a thing for you. Maybe your leaky blood-brain barrier is caused by nutrient deficiency or blood flow issues. Now, the blood flow and the low oxygen, I think, are very strongly correlated. You could have 99% blood oxygen level in your finger, but you might have much less in your brain. You might have a 85% in your brain or less because maybe the blood is not getting to your brain properly. Maybe you got a tight neck. Okay, maybe you've got a lot of forward head posture. Maybe you've had too many panic attacks, which are going to increase the flow of blood through there and then leave you with a tight ball of neck muscles that don't let the blood through. So if you have blood flow issues or low oxygen issues, what is the blood-brain barrier going to do? It's going to open up to allow more nutrients and oxygen and things to get inside of your brain that might not be meant to be there. Or letting things out of your brain that might not supposed to get out, that aren't supposed to get out. So again, this is like is it true? No guarantees, but it definitely makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, issues with the blood-brain barrier. I should say that also concussions can cause issues with the blood-brain barrier. There's a lot of things that can cause issues with the blood-brain barrier, and a lot of people probably have issues with the blood-brain barrier. So it doesn't mean that automatically everybody with an issue with the blood-brain barrier is going to have visual snow syndrome. It's usually a combination of factors, obviously. You know, like, otherwise it'd be really common, I think. But when you have a lot of these things combined together, like neuroinflammation, hypertension, you get sick somehow, or get a vaccine, or get whatever going on top of having bad sleep and maybe being stressed out a little bit. People say stress causes a lot of stuff, and not realizing that they have low oxygen level because their neck is just too tight to get the blood flow to their brain properly. They end up with issues with this, which might cause that final nail in the coffin. So here it is, the question mark. Is it the leaky blood-brain barrier? I've made this weird circle triangle thing with visual snow syndrome causing serotonin disorder, the serotonin disorder causing the leaky blood-brain barrier, but it's not really like that. It's really these things causing the leaky blood-brain barrier, which causes visual snow syndrome. So this purple arrow is probably not exactly accurate, but it makes a nice little circle here, so it's kind of fun. But either which way, is this the answer? I don't want to say yes. I don't want to confirm it. I don't want to say, like, oh yeah, I'm 100% right. I know it's going to be right, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, and long-term leaky blood-brain barrier is obviously going to cause neuroinflammation. That neuroinflammation could cause changes in your brain, and those changes in your brain are going to cause visual snow syndrome. There could be now a few more question marks in between this leaky blood-brain barrier and visual snow syndrome. We could have what is causing all of this? What is causing the serotonin disorder, basically? Maybe an arrow back and forth here. What is causing this to cause this? Who cares about visual snow syndrome? Why is the leaky blood-brain barrier causing the serotonin disorder in the first place? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if they're ever going to know. The worst thing about the leaky blood-brain barrier hypothesis is that how do you fix it? Oh, this is the worst part about it all, because it's the advice that I've been giving people for a really long time, which is just to be healthy. Oh, it's such a cop-out. I hate it. I hate it. I don't want it to be this way. But by having better posture, eating a better diet that has less inflammation in it in general, by exercising properly, and by limiting stress, and just, if we go back to the previous slide here, make sure you sleep okay, make sure you don't get sick that much, make sure you limit your hypertension if possible, and by limiting your hypertension, you might not want to take drugs that limit hypertension if you have blood flow issues to the brain, because that's only going to make it worse. And all of those issues together, and make sure you don't have any nutrient deficiencies. Be healthy. Just be healthy. And that might help resolve your leaky blood-brain barrier. That might help solve the serotonin disorder, but maybe it won't. Maybe the damage is already done. Maybe those receptors won't come back. Maybe it's donezoed. I don't know. I don't know for sure. But I can tell you that this is a reasonable hypothesis, because if you fix the leaky blood-brain barrier over many months to maybe years, maybe you can fix your visual snow. And that is an exciting idea to some people. Okay, maybe it's just a receptor issue. There's no death of neurons. Maybe you could fix this, which will lead a fix of this. I hope that this helped people out in a little bit in understanding, possibly understanding visual snow syndrome, understanding how it causes the serotonin disorder, how the serotonin disorder actually is working in your brain, how it causes the overactivity by having a serotonin problem. I still don't know if this is too much serotonin or too little serotonin, but I think that it's probably too little serotonin, but I'm not sure, actually. I really don't know for sure. And eventually, obviously, we have to lead that serotonin disorder to what caused it in the first place again. We bring it back. What caused it? Maybe the blood-brain barrier. Maybe. And we bring it all together. Visual snow syndrome, leaky blood-brain barrier. So if you guys enjoyed, press the like button for me. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this, if I'm completely wrong and crazy and an idiot. And I guess I'll follow up with one last thought here. The only thing that I really don't like about my theory is that some people claim that this also causes like seizures and stuff. And I don't know for sure, or more, maybe even more severe issues than we currently have. But I can tell you right now that having all of this is one of the worst things in the entire world. It really, really, really is. Having all of this be really, really, really bad. I didn't have a seizure, but I did have brain zaps and other things going on when mine was really, really bad. And I never took an SSRI. I got brain zaps and brain thumps. And this would make more sense to me. So, yeah, that's all I got. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And have a super duper delicious day.